we were coming in, it was just super crowded, super obnoxious and super sweaty. Bloodspasm was playing and they had just gotten done and Paul sees me.
Hey, caution or danger, danger, acid.
And then he grabs me and goes, this is really fucked up in here, man. This is really fucked up in here. And then he just hugs me and I'm sweaty, all of his sweat. He'd like to hug you with a lot of his sweat.
And I just kind of remember looking at him and he just got more comical and more animated and his face kind of got more like bigger and his smile was like more exaggerated kind of. Like I was like, wow. And I had known he had been to clown school. He went to clown college, if you did not know that. He, believe it or not, went to Florida and was like, was gonna be a clown. And so you can see it in his face with that smile and everything. So I knew this, and I'm looking at him, he got more clown-like to me. So I'm like, wow, I think it's starting to kick in, man. I'm gonna step outside, you know, because there was music kind of going on and people are in the room and it was kind of tight. So I slid out through the kitchen, go out to the backyard, and there's a big backyard, some trees kind of hanging over the backyard, and they're just like, you know, and I kind of went to relieve myself, and then that's when it all was like, yeah, that was some acid in there for sure, you know.
I've got a copy of the Sacrilege album someplace, and they mention the punch on the liner notes.
Other than Paul being a maniac and maybe getting naked or something, I don't remember too much.
And the next morning, I got up to go to school.
Well, actually, it was around noon.
And I had to, this is when I was living at 818 and a half, and I came up the alley and turned the corner, and there's Paul Young.
Paul had been laying out on the front of the steps. This is, like I said, this is a work day or something. This is right next to Greasy Tony's Speedway Boulevard. Tons of traffic as he laid out naked for hours, passed out.
Laying buck-ass naked on the steps of 818, but he had his red Chuck Taylors on. So he's like butt-ass naked with a pair of red Chuck Taylors, like passed out on the steps. And I get on my skateboard and I start to freaking ride down the road, and I can't remember. It seems like I went over to 814 and told Tasha, like, hey, I think Paul's like naked in the road. But before I got to do that, the mailman came by and saw Paul like passed out naked on the steps. He did like a juke, like a sidestep, and just tossed the mail up on the porch because he wouldn't go closer.
I wasn't there, thank God. And but I did hear about it. We did get a good laugh.
And it was pretty fucking funny.
He was working at the record store Roads to Moscow, so he was like a pretty big figure in the music scene at that time. I think before that he worked at another record store, so he was pretty well known.
He was always interested in playing you different kinds of music, you know, like he'd come in and he'd say, now, Michael, this is a new kind of music. It's called industrial music. Here it is, and he put on this SBK record. It's like, you know, this reminds me of early Tangerine Dream, right? You know, I'd never heard of it, and I vaguely had an idea. You know, he had a vast musical knowledge, you know, and he didn't always show it, because the punk scene, there was a thing about, you know, coming from the pure inspiration and your skill doesn't matter and all that stuff, but he was very, very musically knowledgeable guy.
The record store out at Park Mall, and go there and hang out with Paul for a while, and he'd be like, you, dude, I knew you'd like this. I put this aside, you know, and he was just great.
Because we knew him from Zips and were friendly with him, he was kind of on our side early on, and that was, I think, a protective factor. I never got harassed.
You know, I'm a little guy too, you know, and he was a protector. He'd pull you out of the way. It's gonna get bad, you know, and like move you out, like just usher you aside. No, he was very paternal.
Paul had our backs the whole time, and Matt Mayers also had our backs. These are people who actually had been. Paul had been like, I think he'd been in the Marines or something.
He was really like like an uncle almost in a lot of ways, or camp counselor, or a disturbing teacher.
He was really another one of these really complex figures.
But I remember him once praising my knees in a Jamaican accent, saying, "Ja knees," and touching my, and knelt and touched my knees, saying, "Ja knees."
Well, I could tell you about our the Bloodspasm gig in Reed Park, with where our guitar player Paul got naked.
Yes, please.
So yeah, it was an afternoon show in Reed Park. I don't know how we got this thing booked, but we rented a band shell out there, and we're playing, and I guess it was a Saturday afternoon, and our guitar player Paul decided to take his clothes off, which he sometimes did. So he's out there playing naked, and the next thing I know, there's a little old lady that walks up to him, and she waits for the song to stop, and then she just goes right up to Paul, and she says, "Excuse me, but could you turn your music down? We're having a dog show over here, and you're disturbing the dogs." And Paul Young is this 6'3" Viking-looking guy with long hair, and she doesn't even look down to acknowledge that he's naked. She just looks straight at him and asks him if we'll turn our music down. And he's like, he just kind of looks at her, turns around and turns his amp down a little bit and says, "Okay." And then she goes back to the poodle show or whatever it was. And we kept playing a little bit quieter. Yeah, he was an interesting character. I remember I met him years before we were in Bloodspasm, and he was working at one of the record stores, and he was just this long-haired guy. He wasn't in a band yet. So I thought, oh, he's like a mellow hippie guy, you know? And then the next time I saw him, I realized that was like the worst first impression ever, because he was anything but a mellow hippie. He was more like a raging Hessian or something.
The thing with Paul Young, you know, I had to go to work one day, and I ran into Paul, and I was supposed to turn in a homework assignment at one of my classes, one of my art classes at Pima. And I said, "Man, I got to get this thing, but I'm supposed to be at work." And he said, "I'll take it and deliver it to school for you." And I said, "You can't do that, Paul." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll just tell him I'm your dad." And I was like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah, trust me. I'll go down there. What room is it in?" He knew he was a student at Pima. He'd gone to Pima for a long time. So he knew the building, he knew the classrooms. I said, "Well, it's in the back in this one room." And he's like, "I'll take it in there and I'll turn it in." What I got from my teacher later on was that Paul went in there and like blew me up like I was his kid, and I was the greatest kid that a guy could ever hope for, you know. And he was like, "Yeah, I really liked what you guys at the school are doing for my son." Like, "Well, it's been a pleasure to have Wayne in class." And he just inflicted that whole thing. And I got my assignment turned in, but this is one of those things where, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Paul, did he have to do that? No, he did it because there was a vibe of just like of community. I hate that word. There was a vibe of maybe before we were all in this together. You know, I was like, we were just together.
Here they are, live from the pits of hell. The band that partied with Adrian Adonis in the duty hut, Bloodspasm!
society, only gonna get this gonna change the year. But this is reality for what that's worth. A communist government has no soul, no salvation, that's salvation. Communist government has no soul, no salvation, that's salvation. Wanna be the opium and Eritrea, that's the content of a diva viva. One of the best still is dead. I'm asking the belligerent instead. And I'm like an ally, we left only as American body. For our folly, the Europeans will die on that. Train on the clock just runs away. Communist government has no soul, no salvation, that's salvation. Communist government has no soul, no salvation, that's salvation. Before you get another next set, consider how your money will be spent. Do you know if you will see the poor or help spread Marxism to our door?